You're all very welcome today. My name is PJ Timmons. I'm Managing Director of the Alternative Board here in Ireland. And this morning, we have a fabulous group of speakers lined up for you on this very important topic. It's something that we've seen a particular topic just at our own peer boards around, and we're finding certainly feedback that lockdown number 2 is actually proven to be much more difficult perhaps than 1. After all, funds are maybe a bit tighter, it's winter, subsidy schemes are not as generous, and also realization that maybe the blended workplace is actually maybe here to stay. The world, in fact, has become flat as services can be delivered by competent people with a good internet connection, possibly anywhere in the world. So we're saying to a lot of our members that it's now 2025. In other words, the green shoots that were there last year have almost emerged like it's 2025. Things have happened very, very quickly. And things have become mainstream in the last few months that we could not imagine. Our attempt to help members, though, to see around the corners for the threats, the opportunities that this actually presents. And we've brought together the experts to help you maybe see around those corners. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers to you. My pleasure to introduce Jerome Ford to you. Jerome is the founder and managing director of HR Duo. HR Duo is the new model for the complete outsourced HR solution for SMEs and larger organizations, and is combining software and highly specialized HR professional services, really your remote HR department. Now, their software is not just personnel records in time and attendance, but it's workflow, performance management, and applicant tracking system, much, much more. Jerome has held the top HR positions in the country. He's a super approachable character, and he's really TAB's go-to resource when we need complex senior people issues and when professional help is required. So Jerome, over to you. And
okay, good morning, everyone. Greetings from our offices here in Dunshaughlin, County Meath. We're in operation here since about 2018. At this point, we have over 200 clients. You'll find us from hospitality to the public sector, from manufacturing to professional services. And what I'm trying to give you this morning, I suppose, is a sense of the experience of our clients of the current situation and how they might look and how we might look forward based on what we've learned over the past couple of months. We all acknowledge that work is a key feature of human existence. It's our economic engine. We can't do without it. It will always be there in some shape or form. And offices have been the predominant place of work since the Industrial Revolution. But we have recognized that change has been coming because of capability driven by personal technology and digital connectivity over the past 10 or 15 years. We knew change was coming, but boy, it was very quick when it came in the end. And as we look to the first slide there, where we're taking a look at a perspective over the next couple of years, we're acknowledging the fact that this pandemic has created a new perspective, new opportunity, new way of looking at work for employees, which will have to be taken into account going forward. We're challenging you that the office is not the answer, but we're also saying, and we'll discuss it as we go through, that the home is not the answer. We're saying that working from home is not the same as working from in the office, and we will discuss that. Part of the challenges that SMEs in particular experience is the coordination of workflows, the replication of the hierarchical setup of leaders, managers, and subordinates within the workplace. The consideration of whether somebody, as we go forward, whether somebody who works from home is at one end of the scale a contractor to the business rather than an employee, and at the other end of the scale perhaps a blended employee who works both from home and from the office. We question the treatment of home workers and the lack of legislation and support that there is available there. We talk about the employee relations concerns. And we will also say that while the employee perspective and position on this will be important, companies will ultimately decide how they will contract their business going forward, and that's dependent on their ability to recruit employees. It's also dependent on their own perception of the capacity that they have to share knowledge and experience with each other while working from home. How will they disseminate things like best practice? And how will they support people who are struggling? So these are all issues, and we're not adopting a position because we believe that the genie is out of the bottle, that working from home is not going to be part of the world going forward. But we're questioning whether these issues which we have raised, which are solvable, the issues in terms of people's employment and the structure of employment and how people may be treated from home, they raise quite a number of questions. And as we move on to the next slide, which looks at the employer's challenges, we address some of those. So a lot of our clients, when they had or were forced to, in response to a public health emergency, to have people working from home, one of the first things that they learned was the need to say things, the challenges that were created for them, and things like brainstorming and problem solving and knowledge sharing. They did learn as well, on the other hand, that a lot of us don't need to be co-located in order to manage work and manage our workloads. But there were challenges in terms of managing accountabilities, getting collaboration and cooperation between people who are working remotely, and kindness and patience as well as important values, where particularly you're talking about people who are trying to address mental health issues, where people are working from home when they have never had to consider these before. A small or medium-sized manager will have difficulties in managing by appointment, setting up meetings with people where they have been used to walking to a person's desk or communicating with them directly. They'll have challenges in data security and GDPR, although thankfully many of the mechanisms that are in place to manage our documents can take care of those quite readily. Technology is an important part of people working from home, managing people's accountabilities, getting collaboration and cooperation. We spent quite a bit of time and energy on one of our products, Team Duo, which manages remote working during this period of time. But we're also saying that technology isn't the answer, and ceding your management to technology can also create problems. We're also recognizing that larger companies, in terms of managing workflow, bringing new people in, have different issues than small or medium-sized companies. So those are the challenges. In the next slide, let's look at some of the employee relations issues which have arisen for us as people have returned to work and gone from work. We've had people who have refused to return to the office, and we have had people who've been racing back into the office after the initial lockdown. So working from home suits some people, it suits some roles, but not all. When people have returned to the workplace, they've returned to the workplace where layoff and redundancies have been a factor as people have grappled with the loss in income brought on by the pandemic. And from a health and safety perspective, it creates a survivor syndrome for those who are left. Mental health and well-being became a much more important issue for people to try and understand and address, as they had people working from home, as people were lonely, they were missing the social compatibility within the workplace, they had difficulty receiving feedback on the work that they were doing, and their sense of positioning, particularly in making decisions, can be affected by working from home without the kind of supports that were required. Where people were returning to the office, it was important that the implementation of the health and safety requirements were in place. Where other questions which arose were people stopping work from home. People were over contributing in various surveys when they were working from home. Now, some of that, it was speculated, were caused by the fact that people were in fear of losing their jobs. But it is known that people who do work from home tend to spend many more hours contributing to the workplace than people who have to go into the office. And that caused concerns in terms of ongoing work from home and dealing with new starters in particular. Bigger companies found it easier to induct new starters than smaller companies did. So as we move on to the next slide, we look at things, what we've learned. Anyone who would be talking about change will be informing you that constant and unpredictable change is the new normal. And that's never been truer than the current situation. This was not planned, so employers responded to a public health emergency, and their normal modes of control and management became fundamentally changed. Not better, not worse, but certainly different. And the management capabilities required of small and medium-sized businesses to manage these accountabilities and coordination were greater than they were before. Ongoing decision making in order to set this up was made on the fly. But as we're longer into it, as the government is saying to us that this is likely to be the position up to the end of 2021, we're looking to evolve from, particularly from a company position, from survival to prospering in the new ways of working. Our busiest departments over the last while have been the employee relations department, dealing with layoffs and redundancies. But ironically, our busiest department at the moment is recruitment. We find positioning more difficult to understand than the positioning up to this point. So the next stage of the pandemic from an employment perspective is likely to raise greater challenges as things become more embedded, as management issues come more to the fore, as employee relations issues in managing the remote workforce to the fore. But again, there's nothing inevitable about how we organize work today, and people have shown themselves to be open to dealing with people. I do want to reflect for a minute on mental health awareness, managing and minding remote working staff, and going back to seeding to technology. Staff can feel unsupported and uncared for when they're working from home, and that's a practical productivity issue for companies to begin to learn about and begin to address. And the longer it goes on, the greater the need for a structure, feedback mechanism. The organization of working time, of course, people continue to be liable to the time limits and rest breaks there. But I'm suggesting that rather than managing time, people will need to move to a more flexible approach to working, looking at outputs rather than time spent, and to be conscious of the disruption of social engagements. And that's not only the social engagements around the dealing with workplace issues, but the normal social engagements that staff members have within the workplace, the friendships that are created. So the ability to deal with those, to have virtual coffee breaks where management aren't present. There are ways of dealing with this. It's just we're in a new world, and we need to get used to it. SMEs are used to having their team nearby. They're used to be able to communicate directly. They're used to be able to giving oversight, motivation, sharing the knowledge. A remote working environment poses challenges. And what you're trying to do is to create a situation where people who are working remotely can, as far as possible, replicate the type of working and engagement and communication that they have within the workplace. Where the extreme of working from home is where it becomes a transactional piece working type of operation, where it becomes a more contractual arrangement. And I think that's a broader issue which needs to be addressed sometime in the future. So we need to have policies in place for new ways of work and procedures where things don't go according to plan. Where is the workplace? We're dealing with public health pandemic at the moment. People are working in the attic, the kitchen, the hallway, the garage. So as things settle down, as we put policies in place, not every home is suitable for home working. And as we speak again about working hours, client care, and working methods, are all things which need to go through this change with as little effect as possible. They need to be documented as time goes by in contracts, policies and procedures. They also need to be supported from a legislative perspective in terms of recognising the home worker as a part of the working arrangements within companies. And companies need to augment any policies and procedures that they put in place for homework with custom practice and the culture of the company. So we're changing things, which means ultimately we have to change everything. There's a danger that we would stand in the wrong place looking from this world, which is the world of the office, to the home working environment, rather than addressing the new reality on its own. And it's the same as teachers learning that delivering lessons by Zoom is a completely different use of skills and engagement than standing in front of a class. Employers are learning that people who are working from home is a very different way of managing, engaging, communicating, and getting productivity. And remember, at the end of the day, what's going to determine home working in the future is not going to be the pandemic, it's not going to be the preference of the employee. It's going to be based on productivity, and achieving productivity in a different way requires a different approach. So it requires rethinking working practices. To what extent is the employer responsible for the vulnerable home worker, and how that can be captured in policies and procedures. We've run a business here with 25 people on 100 megs of broadband up to recently, but now people who are working from home can be operating on 1 gigabyte at home. We've proved that Wall Street can stretch across every street. There are issues which emerge if we're recruiting people at this time. If I'm recruiting a developer, for example, and it's to be a remote working job, I can be recruiting somebody in Romania or in Bangalore, and I can be recruiting somebody in Dublin. And that can have issues in terms of the work that's done, how it's done, whether they're an employee, whether they're a contractor, and the cost of the role. And these are all issues which emerge as time goes by. The pay and conditions of homework will become an issue. Over in the UK, there's been a London allowance for people having to travel and live and work in Dublin. There may be a differentiation between the pay that somebody who's working from home receives, the pay that somebody works in the office. If somebody is working from home on a consistent and long-term basis, are they going to lose out on their ability to progress and engage within the workplace? And these are all medium-term rather than short-term issues. I would say that businesses move on and people move on. And this is going to be the reality of the situation for the next year or so, which means that there will be thousands of people who will have started work in an environment where a lot of their work has been done from home. So, our past practice of centralizing work, culture, art, food and business in the centres of cities and towns is effectively going to be broken by this. And there are philosophical, commercial and productivity issues to be dealt with. Does everybody want to work from the beach just because there's bandwidth available for them to do their job? Does everybody want to work from home? How are you going to make a decision in terms of how this is going to be managed? Our argument is that the genie is out of the bag. The public sector, Tata, GitLab, Twitter, Facebook and Shopify have already made permanent decisions in terms of working from home when all this is over. And we have to learn to adapt to it, but I don't think we know fully what it is just yet. But we're experiencing the experiment in real time at the moment.
Thank you very much, Jerome. We're going to have a very quick poll. The question is really, what percentage of your workforce will be remote in 12 months' time? So I'm going to end polling on that. And the winner is between 25 and 50%. Quite extraordinary. The forecast we've seen up to this is about 24%. But so this particular group, maybe of SMEs, it's even going to be higher. Thank you very much for doing all that. End of part 1. Please join us for part 2, the health and safety aspects of working remotely.